everybody, today I am going to be painting a couple of koi fish for you. I'm going to be using a lot of wet and wet watercolor technique on this painting. These fish are very simple to draw, and this technique makes them very easy to paint as well. So I'm going to do my best to explain my painting process so that if this is something you would like to try out at home, you'll understand how I was able to do this. The first thing you saw me do was erase out my pencil lines so that they were just barely visible to the eye, and then I used a brush and clear water to just dampen the whole surface of the body of the fish. Now I am picking up some watercolor pigment. I am using the Dr. P.H. Martin Hydrus watercolor, which are liquid watercolors, and I'm taking this vermilion shade, just a little tiny bit on my brush at a time, and I am just dotting that into the areas of the fish that I want to be orange. This particular fish is going to be an orange and white koi fish, and then I am letting that watercolor just kind of spread out and blend over the fish. This is called wet and wet technique. I continue to add more watercolor pigment into the centers of these orange parts of the fish just to make sure that the color stays nice and vibrant. I don't mind if it blends out at the edges and fades into the white areas of the fish, but I want the centers of these areas to stay very colorful and lively. I double checked the name on this paint color, by the way, and it is cadmium red light for any of you who might have this set at home and are thinking of painting along with this video. Now that the body has had a little bit of time to dry, I am going to move into working on the tail and the fins. And for that, I am just making that whole area damp, just like I did with the body. And then I am going to go in with some very light washes of cadmium red light. And also, I have some black on my palette. I'm going to dilute that down to a very light gray. By using these two colors in light washes over the tail and fins of the fish, I'm going to add some realism through definition and detail. I'll be working with these colors to create a couple of layers, the first one being a little bit looser as I use that wet and wet technique, and then after that dries, I'm going to go back and refine these parts of the fish. The reason that I waited to do the tail and fins until the body was dry is because had the body still been wet and I wet these areas as well, the orange color would have bled into them and probably spread pretty evenly over them, and I did not want that. So that is an important thing to keep in mind when you are working wet and wet, that it is often better to work in one section of the painting at a time. Now I'm adding just a hint of color and shadow to the fish's fins, and I am also going to take my brush and just drag that little bit of shadow down the side of the fish as well to give the illusion of depth. Now we are moving on to the second fish. And the process is going to be very similar to the first fish, with lightening the lines, making the entire body of the fish damp, and then I will begin dropping in pigment. The only difference with this fish is that it's going to be tricolored, so it's going to have the white and cadmium red light, and then also some areas of black. I'm going to add in both the cadmium red light and the black using the same wet and wet technique. Unfortunately, I lost the footage for when I dropped in the black areas of paint, but after the fish had dried, I decided that the black areas were a little too light. So what I did was I went into the more pigmented pool of black on my paint palette, and I began to fill these areas in once again. I left the fuzzy edges around them where they had blended in the wet and wet technique because I wanted to preserve that to match the rest of the fish, and I just filled in the center parts of these areas with the deeper black tone again. Now I'm going to repeat the same process for the fins and the tail that I did on the first fish, just by wetting those and then adding in some light washes of color and a little bit of detail. So I will let you guys watch that, and I will be back to explain the process for the background for this painting. So I went ahead and taped down this painting so that as we do the background, I can retain some nice, clean, crisp edges. And then I added water to the top left corner of the painting, and I am using the wet and wet technique again to drop in a bunch of blue, and then I'm also going to be adding some little bits of gold also from my Gansai Tambi metallic set. The fun part of doing this is really to just drop that paint in and let it flow around and kind of create its own pattern and look. You'll also notice that I try to keep all of the edges wet. So you never want the background to dry in any given area because then it would create a line. So my stopping points are by the tricolored fish's left fin and then up by the top fish's tail. And then as I work through the center, I continue to add water and move it down so that that stays wet as I work. And I do this because it will be easy to re-wet the small areas by the edges of the paper and bring the water into a new area rather than allowing it to dry in the center of the painting and, as I mentioned, create a line that I'm going to have to try to rework. If you are new to using watercolors with a wet and wet technique, I recommend taking a little bit of time to plan out your painting, especially the background area, before you dive in, so that you don't end up having to rush and try to keep multiple areas of your painting wet at the same time, because that can make it very stressful and very easy to make mistakes. I definitely made my fair share of mistakes when I began working with this method. Something that I didn't expect with this painting that I ended up really enjoying was how the gold paint pushed the blue paint, and in some areas of the painting created kind of almost a crackled or textured effect. It's really fun as an artist when you have those kinds of unexpected occurrences that end up adding to the overall look and feel of your painting. So as I finish the last corner of this piece, I just want to thank you guys for watching, and while you're here, be sure to subscribe. I try to upload new art videos every week with different types of content, and I would love to see your comments and feedback here on my channel. So thanks again, and I will see you again soon.